With great power comes great responsibility.
Hello, thanks for clicking on this video from Checkmate Humanity, where I talk about how to survive in our current social media climate, which is made up of over 4 billion citizens operating deadly weapons with little to no training or law enforcement. Good times, eh? Please remember to like, subscribe, share this wherever you can, and hit that notification bell so it says all when when I upload a video. You know, in my view, it's anarchy here on the internet. In case you need a helpful reminder of what anarchy is, here's our working definition. A state of disorder due to absence or non-recognition of authority. For this video, my emphasis is on the absence of authority rather than the non-recognition of authority, because for authority to be recognized, there needs to be some authority, right? Or as it stands right now, the only authority that exists on social media are arbitrary rules that change per platform and result in widely varying degrees of enforcement, ranging from being put in jail on Facebook for a period of time to completely losing your YouTube channel and access to the Google platform. But that's clearly not working. Just do a Google search on social media harms, and you'll get several pages full of scientific evidence showing that social media is harming all of us. And it's harming us at a rate that seems to make it nearly impossible for a good body of rules and laws to catch up. Side note, after seeing Pulp Fiction multiple times, I can't say the words catch up without thinking of this scene.
3 tomatoes are walking down the street. Papa Tomato, Mama Tomato, and Baby Tomato. Baby Tomato starts lagging behind, and Papa Tomato gets really angry. Goes back and squishes him. Says, ketchup. Ketchup.
Okay, let's get back to our discussion here. We all want access to social media, right? And hopefully we all want to coexist peacefully with each other on social media. Until the laws catch up, what can we do? What can we do? We can recognize the very big responsibility that we all have with the voice that we've been given by social media. Think about it. At one time, the only people who had a voice beyond a small circle of friends or family were people who became famous for one reason or another. Now, we've all been granted access to that voice. We've all been given tools that give us superpowers we never had before. We can send a viral tweet that could be seen by millions at a time. Even a video on YouTube with 100 views probably reaches a broader audience than we could without the amplificatory nature of the tool called social media. Oh, and also you can monetize that stuff. People who become famous in real life usually learn at some point that with their big voice, they have a big responsibility. Now that we all have access to tools that can reach across the world, we all have that responsibility. So you're like, all right, I'm bought in. Social media gives us a big voice and we have big responsibility. What is our responsibility? Well, you're in luck, because I'm about to give you my idea of what it means to take responsibility. And these are just a few ideas. I probably have missed some. First, we have a responsibility not to harm people with this voice we've been given, especially if we're going to harm them on a monetized YouTube channel. This means you have responsibility to understand the power of words, because the internet is mostly a medium of words, and words have consequences. I come from the true crime community where I feel that this is especially true. We're dealing with victims who are experiencing the worst moments of their lives, and we have a responsibility not to make that any worse for them. We have a responsibility to understand what kinds of things would make it worse for them. Doing this requires having compassion and empathy. It takes stepping back and saying, if my child was missing right now, how would it feel to hear people saying horrible things about that child? Or to automatically assume with no evidence to support it that I had something to do with it, or even somebody else had something to do with it with no evidence. We also have a responsibility to not intentionally or unintentionally spread misinformation. Our real world laws understand this, but social media moves way too fast for the real world laws to hold spreaders of misinformation accountable. So it's our responsibility to figure out whether what we're about to say is factual, or whether it's just a piece of hearsay that we're passing around. Hearsay can be harmless, but other hearsay can be incredibly dangerous, such as passing hearsay about someone being a sex offender or a murderer. It even applies to passing hearsay that someone is a liar without proof. We may have a right to that opinion, but if we pass it on as fact without knowing it's a fact, we failed in our responsibility, and that is important. In addition, we have responsibility to know what we do know and what we don't know. Someone who doesn't give a crap about responsibility will come on the internet and act like they know things they don't. Doing this on the internet, especially in visual mediums like YouTube, there's some inherent belief that our words have more credibility because we have a channel on YouTube. A phony YouTube doctor can do just as much or more harm than a phony real life doctor because they have a bigger voice and touch more people in many places. Giving people bad medical advice could lead to sickness or death for them. That is serious stuff. So if you're not a doctor, don't say you're a doctor. If you don't know the answer to the question, just say, I don't know the answer to the question. There's no shame in saying, I don't know. Take responsibility for the knowledge you do have and the knowledge you don't have. Because if you don't have that knowledge and you say you do and someone acts on it, they could be harmed. We also have a responsibility to know the difference between free speech and protected speech. Now, I'm not a lawyer or a lawmaker or even a constitutionalist, so I'm not going to give a legal tutorial on this, but I do know that not all speech is protected by the Constitution, and it's our responsibility to figure that out before saying things on social media. I believe it's on all of us to understand that, and to understand that there's a reason certain speech is free speech and the reason certain speech is not free speech. It's because it's dangerous and harmful. Yes, that's right. Certain words, especially when they're put in the same sentence or phrase, are dangerous and harmful. Responsible thing to do is to understand what those words and phrases are, and more importantly, why they are dangerous and harmful, so you understand the full spirit of what those freedoms and protections mean. One part of free speech that is free speech but marches right up to the line of not free speech is to shame or humiliate people based on their appearance, their group membership, or their personality traits, especially for things that they were born with and could never change. The way I try to adhere to that is by not commenting at all on people's appearance. And when I talk about people's personalities, I try not to label them or make it a big part of a conversation because it's typically has absolutely no bearing on whatever it is we're talking about. And it's impossible to know why that person looks or acts the way they do, or is a member of that group, or has those certain beliefs. Besides, let's just face it, if there's something about a person's looks that you're noticing, do you think you're really the first person to point it out to that person? It's possible that you're picking on the thing that has been a barrier to their self-esteem all their life. Why pile on? What is the purpose? None. It's just to be mean. And I'll go out on a limb and say it's really lazy. You know, people with lazy minds resort to picking on people's looks and result in those ad hominem arguments that I've talked about in a previous video. And there's a whole other important element of this responsibility, and that's taking responsibility for how your words could affect other people who are listening to or seeing your words. You've probably watched a live stream once or twice where you saw someone on the panel dragging on someone's glasses or crooked teeth or their weight. And if you're someone with glasses or crooked teeth or have a weight problem, it can really sting to hear that. And it gives you a whole new perspective and impression of the person who said those things. So take responsibility for you being the one saying it and getting that new impression of you, and for the fact that there are certain words or phrases that would hurt any reasonable person, even if it's free speech. Now, I can hear people muttering to themselves right now as they watch this, saying something like, well, hey, if they're hurt by stuff that I say, it's on them, not me. Well, that's true to a point, but that's not true if you're intentionally saying things that you know could be harmful, if you're intentionally doing it to be hurtful. To any human being, it's objectively hurtful to be called fat. It's objectively hurtful to be picked on for your looks. What I've also seen a lot of here on the tubes is people making a big hairy deal out of something being said or done to them by someone else on YouTube, then turning around and doing the exact same thing or worse, and having a whole other explanation for why they did it. I feel that it's our responsibility to be consistent and have some sort of pride in what we say, and the fact that people are following along with what we say, and they will notice if there's inconsistencies, and honestly, hopefully they'll call you out on it. All the stuff you say is on the record on social media in digital format. People may be coming across your content for many, many years to come. Will you be proud of the things you said today, 10 years from now, just to hurt people? Think about that. I think it's our responsibility to consider the fact that our words have the potential to impact many, many people. Finally, I think it's our responsibility to know that size matters. Not in that way, you dirty birds. I mean the size of your audience matters. If you have a channel with, anywhere from 10 to 100,000 subscribers, and you start picking on a channel with, 1,000 or less subscribers, you're not being responsible. You're being a straight up bully, because that channel doesn't have as big a voice or following as you do. You have a very unfair advantage over them. It's even worse if an influencer starts picking on a private person who isn't even on social media to defend themselves. I see this happen a lot on true crime. The voices of the victims get overwhelmed by the internet's fascination with the criminal and their families. This is a really unfair and dangerous thing to do. I came close to that myself, honestly, a few months ago when I covered a case of a young woman who was found dead in an abandoned house. And when I covered the case, I saw a lot of, honestly, sketchiness in her fiance. And I reported about my feelings on that and showed what I was talking about. And I did it with all the caveats of I don't know for sure, blah, blah, blah. But this person seems sketchy. Well, I now regret doing that, because he wasn't named a suspect. And he was in mourning over the loss of his fiance, and it did get to him. He was pissed, and honestly, I understand why, and removed the video. Lesson learned. So, I'm not sitting here speaking from a place of perfection, as if I've never done anything to learn what I'm learning now. And finally, I do believe that we have a responsibility to call out bad behavior when we see it. Now, this is the old see something, say something rule. By the same token, I believe that we have a responsibility to listen to feedback from others when they think we've done something wrong, and not to dismiss it out of hand. However, be careful of who you're calling out. You don't know what they're capable of. And if you don't feel safe, just do the old Google reporting. And if you want to, you can create an alt. And I just don't recommend going to the trouble of creating an alt just to make, to call somebody out. If you make your reports to Google and there are enough reports to Google, maybe eventually they'll move forward with it. But at this point, that might be the only way to call out people who we know could be really problematic if we call them out. In all honesty, I think there are probably a lot more responsibilities I can call out, but this video is long enough now, so I'll continue to update this thread if I think there are more ways that I think we should all take responsibility for the amplified voices we've been given by social media. Peace out.